I'd like to welcome you all to Family Literacy Day 2021. I'm excited to share our book, Never Rub Noses with a Narwhal, with all of you. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I am privileged to live and work on the traditional land of the Indigenous and Métis people, and that we are all treaty people, bound by the understanding made in the agreement known as Treaty 6. As a teacher, when I thought about writing this book, I knew I wanted it to have some value beyond being fun and beautiful. Attention to the sounds of language helps children develop phonemic awareness and puts them at an advantage when they begin reading. I'm also hopeful that readers of this book may develop a new understanding of the people and animals of the far north, and that you might even learn something new. So, without further ado, I bring you Never Rub Noses with a Narwhal. The beautiful illustrations were done by my son Morgan, and now, as Mary Poppins would say, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. So, we're going to start with the letter A. And an airplane arrives in Aklavik Airport. Now, airplanes were really important in opening up the north because in early days, and even to this day, there aren't many roads. So things like oil and food had to be transported by air. And that happened after the First World War, when many veterans came back and they had learned the skills of piloting an airplane, and they became our first bush pilots. And Aklavik is a very interesting little community in the Northwest Territories. It was the first place to receive a shipment of airmail. It was from Fort McMurray to Aklavik. And it is also the burial place of the mad trapper of Rat River. And you can get your mom and dad, maybe, to check that out on the internet. There's some wonderful stories about the mad trapper from Rat River. So then we have B. And blubber, which is a thick kind of fat, helps belugas stay buoyant in the Beaufort Sea. And a caribou calf capers through clusters of cloudberries. And cloudberries look very much like a raspberry, but they're bright orange instead. D. Ducks deftly divert around a diamond mine. Diamonds were first discovered in the Northwest Territories in the 1990s, and we are now the third largest producer of gem quality diamonds in the world. E and F. I couldn't think of anything that was particularly northern about E and F, so I combined these two letters, and so we have eagles and ermine share the earth and sky with fawns, fishers, and fleabane daisies. G. An Arctic grayling glistens as it glides through Great Slave Lake. So the grayling is a wonderful, delicious fish that's very popular with fishermen. And Great Slave Lake is the second largest lake in the Northwest Territories. It's the fifth largest lake in North America, and it's the 10th largest lake in the whole world. So it is a very, very large lake. Harnessed huskies haul humans near Hootlinkwa. So huskies and other kinds of dogs were really important in the north and still are today in some communities. Snow machines have become very popular, but people still do use huskies and sleds. And Hootalinqua is in the Yukon and was a place traditionally where the First Nations people would meet to hunt, fish, socialize, and do some trading. Isaac wears a gak when he builds his igloo. And a gak, if you can see them here, you can see it looks pretty sunny out. Well, a gak, the Inuit people were the first ones to invent sunglasses. And they used bone or wood, whatever they could find, with tiny little slits in them to keep the sun from shining in their eyes, because it glistens off the snow and causes something called snow blindness, which is really uncomfortable. Okay, Krungayark, and that's an Inuit man's name, kayaks near Ketchikan. And maybe some of you have been on a cruise to Alaska, and you probably stopped in Ketchikan. It's on the Inside Passage, and it's one of the major stops on the Alaska cruise lines. Here we have ladybugs linger on lousewort leaves. And do you know, when we think of ladybugs, we think of the little orange ones with the black specks? Well, there are 5,000 different kinds of ladybugs, and one of them is kind of an electric, bright, bright blue with orange spots. So they're all very different, and they live everywhere in the world except in Antarctica. They're all over the other continents, but none in Antarctica. M. A muskrat meanders through the muskeg. So, muskrat were historically trapped for their fur. But unlike beavers and buffalo, which were hunted and trapped almost to extinction, naturalists maintain that there are as many muskrats as today as there were at the time of European contact. So when the white man first came here and started trapping, they have made no difference to the population of the muskrat. There are lots of them left. And narwhals admire the northern lights in Nunavut. Narwhals are interesting in that they have a long tusk. Some people don't think they're real, but I've seen a real one, and they are. They are the only animal in the whole world that has a straight tusk. If you go out to the barn and look at the cows, you'll see that their horns are curved. Elephants' tusks are curved. Walruses, everybody else has a curved tusk. And this isn't really anything more than a tooth that has grown right through their lip. And it grows and grows, and it could be 8 meters long. Some narwhals have a tusk that long. Usually it's just boys who have tusks, but there's a few girls. About 2% of the narwhal population of female narwhals have tusks. Oh, oodles of ootpicks occupy our toy box. Ootpick is the Inuit word for snowy owl, and living years ago when there were no stores in the north and little kids had no toys to play with, their mums would use sealskin or wolf or whatever they could find, and they would make little stuffed animals. And those stuffed animals had big eyes and big heads, and they called them ootpick because they kind of looked like a little owl. Pelusi's purple parka is patterned with polar bear and ptarmigan. Now, ptarmigan is a tricky word. It has a P at the beginning, but it's silent. We just start with the T. That's one of the tricks of English language. You'll find lots of them as you start to read. Q. Kiviut is quite a bit cozier than cashmere. Now, kiviut is the under hair of the muskox, and you don't have to shear them, and it's very expensive. And it's expensive because the only way they were able to gather the kiviut was the people would wander out onto the tundra, and they would find little bits in the spring where the animal had shed it naturally, caught in bushes and lichen and on rocks. And so it's really very expensive because there wasn't a lot of it. Ravens are rogues who routinely rummage through rubbish. Now, you may have seen some ravens around. In the north, there are lots of them, and they go through dumpsters, and they go through garbage cans, and they make an awful mess. But do you know that they are one of the smartest creatures in the world? They can live to be 20, 25 years of age, out living in the wild, and when they are brought into captivity, they're like a parrot. They can learn to talk. And so they mimic speech, and so they're very clever. And I think that's why they live so long, because they're a very, very intelligent bird. Yes, Saku smiles as he smooths and shapes soapstone. Soapstone is a kind of metamorphic rock that's got lots of talc in it, which makes it really soft, so it's easy to carve. And there are many very, very famous artists from the north, particularly a place called Cape Dorset. It's sort of the world center of Inuit carving. And you know, the most expensive piece of Inuit art was a carving that sold for $289,000. It's quite lovely to look at, but very expensive. And Thomas trudges across the tundra toward his tupik. Now, when you look at his tupik, you might think it looks a lot like something you've seen in the south. And it is. It looks very much like a teepee. But in the north, traditionally, the Inuit people lived in igloos in the winter, and when they went out hunting in the spring, they would build a tent out of sealskin. And if it was just Dad going out hunting on his own, he only needed maybe 5 or 6 sealskins to make his tupik. But if he wanted to take Mom and the kids hunting, then they would need 12 or 15, and they would sew them together and make a tent to stay in while they were out hunting. Una's ulu is a useful utensil. And an ulu is called a woman's knife in the Inuit language, and it was used for everything. A woman used it to cut her kids' hair. She used it to skin animals, to cut meat up, to fillet fish, to shape ice and snow blocks to build an igloo. So it was a very, very invaluable tool. V. A vixen watches her kits as voles play in the vetch. So a vixen is a female fox, and the Arctic fox, this is an Arctic fox, and they're not much bigger than a large house cat, but their tail is very long. And they're the only member of the canid family, which changes colors in the winter. And none other does that. But to fit in with their environment, they turn snowy white in the winter, and their tail is about 1/3 the length of their body. And so when they're sleeping in the snow, they just curl up in a little ball and wrap their big fuzzy tail around their nose, and that keeps them warm and from freezing. W. a walrus's whiskers whiten as he waits. So this big guy is just on the ice by a breathing hole, hoping that a seal will poke its head up, and then he's got lunch. And if you look at those big tusks, they are called tooth walkers because they use those great big tusks to haul themselves out of the ice. When they want to get up on the ice after they've been swimming, they don't have any arms, no hands to pull themselves out. So they put the big tusks on the ice, wiggle themselves out, and then they can use their flippers to kind of move them along the ice. X and Y. This one was tricky too. I couldn't think of very many words that made sense for X and Y. So Xanthoria lichen and yarrow both grow near Yellowknife. And Yellowknife is the capital city of the Northwest Territories. And now here's something you probably all know, a Zamboni. There aren't many rinks in Saskatchewan where we don't have a Zamboni zooming around. So a Zamboni zooms around the Arctic Winter Games complex in Iqaluit. And that's the end of the alphabet, but it's not quite the end of the book. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about some of those funny words that I used in the story. So in the book, I used a lot of words that probably aren't terribly familiar to all of you. So I'm going to show you where some of those odd place names came from, and also just tell you a little bit more about some of the interesting words I used. So for the letter A, Aklavik. And Aklavik is a small hamlet in Canada's Northwest Territories, and it's right up here. And it's quite famous, as I mentioned earlier, for several interesting things. B, belugas stay buoyant in the Beaufort Sea, and the Beaufort Sea is up here. Belugas swim many other places. In fact, I first met belugas in Hudson Bay, here near Churchill, is where I first met them. So they swim, I kind of cheated a little bit. They don't spend as much time in the Beaufort Sea as they do other places, but I needed a B word. So I just, there are some there, I'm sure. C, cloudberries are an herb that's native to alpine and boreal forest, and it's very much like a raspberry, but it is orange, and in Newfoundland and Labrador they call them bake apple, which is kind of weird for a little berry. D, diamond mine. The first commercial production of diamonds in Canada was in 1998, and by 2006, 3 major mines were producing over 13 million carats of gem quality diamonds a year. And people really like Canadian diamonds because they're produced ethically. Many diamonds in other parts of the world, they don't treat the people very nicely who do the diamond mining. And E, an ermine. It's a member of the weasel family, and he changes color in the winter so that he's all white with a little black tail. There's not much more to tell you about an ermine. He's just like a little rodent. Fleabane daisies are an edible and nutritious plant that produce daisy-like blooms, and they grow easily in poor soil, which is a good thing because in the north there is plenty of fairly poor soil. And interestingly enough, because there are so few plants growing in the north, there is not one poisonous plant that grows in northern Canada. Grayling, the Arctic grayling are a species of freshwater fish, and they're in the salmon family. They're very delicious, and fishermen love to catch them. Hootalinqua, it's a name, and Hootalinqua is in the Yukon, And where this little orange flag is, it's right on the Yukon River that goes into the Lake L'Auberge. And it's kind of famous from a poem, The Cremation of Sam McGee, was talking about the Lake L'Auberge. But I think he changed the name a little bit just to make it rhyme, but that's where it happened. And it means, Hoodalinkwa means running against the mountain. And when you look back at the book, you'll see that the dog team is going against the mountain. And there aren't a lot of mountains in the north. There are in Alaska and in Yukon. Let's see, what did we have for? Egak. Now, Isaac was wearing egak when he built his igloo, and I sent a pattern. The original ones were made out of antler or bone, sometimes wood, but there are many parts of the Arctic, particularly in the eastern Arctic, where there are no trees. So they had to use caribou antler or whalebone or whatever they could use. And it was because they were having so much trouble with snow blindness. So they made these, and you can make your own, but be sure to bedazzle or color it up, make yours very special. And that's what they do. And those tiny little slits, I can see everything around me. But if I was out in the snow, the glare wouldn't hurt my eyes. So these are very useful, and they were the first people to invent a sunglass. And juncos, they're just a little bird that's a member of the sparrow family, and they live all over North America, way far north, and they like to hop. They can fly, but they do tend to spend a lot of their life on the ground, hopping around. The kayak is a one-person boat created by the Inuit, and it was originally developed for hunting, and it's usually a one-person boat that was made of a wooden frame and then sealskin pelts went on it to cover it, and they often would put fish oil and to make sure it stayed waterproof. The ladybug is one of Canada's most beloved insects. They're born black, all black, and they develop their bright color and spots in the first couple of weeks of their life. And many people believe that ladybugs are a good luck charm. The muskrat is a large rodent who makes its home in marshes, wetlands, muskeg, and they live all over North America. Historically, they were trapped for their fur. The narwhal, and this is my friend Neville, and Neville often comes with me when I go places. He's a unicorn of the sea, is what they call him, and he's kind of a pale-colored fellow that lives in Arctic waters. And this tusk is a tooth that grows through his lip, and it's always on the left side, and it's got a real spiral to it. I don't know if you can see that, but the tusk spirals. And you know what? Nobody knows for sure what these are for. Somebody said, oh, they catch fish on the end. Well, if he caught a fish on the end of his, and he has no hands, how does he get the fish from here to here? So they think he uses it to dig around in the bottom, stir things up, and then when something floats up, he swoops in and eats it. Others think that maybe they use it for communication, that they rub tusks to pass on information. Oh, ukpik. An ukpik is a popular Inuit handcrafted toy. It's a small owl with a large head and big eyes. They're often made of wolf fur or sealskin. And an ukpik is the Inuit word for snowy owl. And I gave you a pattern to make one of them. And I've made a few here to occupy my toy box, and they're fairly easy to do. So with a little help from a grown-up, I'm sure you can all make a nuke pick of your own. I hope you do. They're kind of fun and fun to play with. Ptarmigan. The ptarmigan are a small group of birds in the grouse family. They have feathered feet and toes, which is an adaptation for living where it's really cold, so their feet don't get cold when they're on the ground. And they're the tricky word. The P at the beginning, we don't say. It's a silent P. And then we had kiviot, was an interesting word. And it's the soft underwool of the muskox, and it's naturally shed each spring. And all of you Scrabble players out there, you can thank me for that. There you've got another Q word that doesn't need a U right after it. The raven is known as the common raven or the northern raven, and he's a large, all-black bird, including his beak. And they can live up to 25 years in the wild and are successful because they're so intelligent. They've been known to make toys out of sticks. They like to play with each other by rolling down snowbanks, and they're really kind of mischievous. And a tupik is a traditional Inuit tent made from seal or caribou skin. Ulu. Now, I mentioned that Una's ulu was a useful utensil. So here it is, it's a curved blade, and they use this for cutting everything. The women use this for their cooking, for filleting fish, for cutting their kids' hair, for cutting out skins to make clothing. So this was kind of made for the tourist trade, I think. The original ones often had bone or antler handles, and it was very, they were passed on from mother to daughter, and it's believed that the spirit of somebody who died is in her ulu. So it was very precious to get your mother's ulu when she passed on. Then we have a vixen, and we really, other than the fact that it's a female fox, I don't have much to tell you about a vixen. And yarrow and Xanthoria elegans, those are plants that grow up there. The Xanthoria lichen is like a big sunburst. It's bright orange, and it usually grows on rocks or places where birds and rodents live. So there's material around that they like to grow in. And Zamboni, believe it or not, I'm sure you all know what a Zamboni is. It is used to resurface and clean the skating rink. But do you know it was invented in 1949 in California? Frank Zamboni came up with the idea for cleaning an ice rink, and that's where it was developed, not here where we have all the rinks. So that's kind of a look at some of the words that I used. And now I'm going to give you some interesting facts so you can go to school and impress your teacher and all your classmates. Did you know there are some 60 distinct languages among Indigenous, First Nations, Dene, Inuit, and Métis in Canada, and they group into 12 distinct cultures. Also in the book, if you get your own copy, you'll find that there's a map of northern North America, and it has every place that I've talked about in the book. You will find it on your map. Now, some interesting facts about the 4 territories. Let's start over here in Alaska. Now, Alaska is part of the United States, but it's also part of northern North America, so I've included it in the book. And Alaska, this one state, has more coastline than all of the rest of the United States put together. It has 34,000 miles. Now, I could have put that in kilometers, which we would all understand, But our American friends don't use that system. So I left it in miles for them. The highest point in North America is Denali, and it used to be called Mount McKinley, and its summit, or the very top of it, is 20,310 feet above sea level. So it's quite high. And there are more than 3,000 rivers, and get this, 3 million lakes in Alaska. We think we've got lots of water and lakes in Saskatchewan. They've got us beat. And then we move on to the Yukon, which is part of Canada. And the coldest temperature ever recorded in Canada was in a place called Snag, Yukon, and it was minus 63 degrees Celsius on February 3rd in 1957. And Snag, Yukon is right up there. Tools dating back 20,000 years are the first evidence of history in Canada. They were found in caves on the banks of the Bluefish River in northern Yukon, and they're right up here near Snag. Caves are southwest of the Vuntut Gwich'in First Nation. And the highest mountain in Canada is in the Yukon, and it is Mount Logan there. And it's just under 20,000 feet. Then we move to the Northwest Territories, which the Northwest Territories used to be all this green and all this yellow, but we separated into two territories, and so now we have the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. So two of the largest lakes in the world are found in the Northwest Territories. Great Bear Lake, and this guy, they kind of think he looks like a bear. This is Great Bear Lake and Great Slave Lake. And Tuktoyaktuk, way up here, beyond the Arctic Circle on the Arctic coast, is connected to the rest of Canada by the Inuvik, which is here, Tuktoyaktuk Highway, and that didn't open until 2017. So, if you wanted, you could drive from Tuktoyaktuk all through Canada, the United States, Mexico, Central America, all the way to the tip of South America at Tierra del Fuego in Argentina. And that would be about 14,000 miles if you went by air. So going by land, it would be much farther than that. So a very long trip. Yeah, so it is now connected. That's the first time they had road transport into Tuktoyaktuk. And the Northern Lights are visible 250 days of the year in the Northwest Territories, which is more than anywhere else in the world. And Nunavut. This used to be here just because it made the map square, but it actually belongs way up here. So all of this, most of them are islands, and the territory of Nunavut takes up 1/5 of Canada's total land area, and that is 2.093 million square kilometers. So we have 10 provinces, 3 territories, and 1 territory takes up 1/5 of all our land. So it's a big, big territory. Half of the world's endangered polar bears live in Nunavut, and the village of Alert, which is way up here, is the northernmost permanent settlement in the world. It's situated on the northeastern tip of Ellesmere Island. So it was originally, there was a joint weather stations, and that's when it was first established. And then we got thinking that we're pretty close to Russia. Actually, it's closer to Moscow than it is to Ottawa. So the Canadian capital is here, but it's closer to the Russian capital. So they thought it was a good place for us to keep track of what the Russians were doing. So that takes care of some of the interesting facts that I wanted you to know about Northern North America. So use that, impress your teacher someday. So all books come from somewhere. And so I would like to acknowledge why I wrote the book and who inspired me to do that. So I'd like to acknowledge all the peoples of the 4 northern territories of North America, whose way of life, art, and culture have fascinated me for years and inspired me to write this book. I hope readers who are unfamiliar with the North will gain some knowledge and appreciation of the beauty and vastness of the land and the tenacity and ingenuity of the people. To the many different linguistic and cultural groups in the Arctic, thank you for your faithful stewardship of the land and resources over many centuries. Your contributions to our countries have been and will continue to be invaluable. I offer you my sincere thank you, merci beaucoup, masicho, kwanami, koana, and miigwech. Thank you all, and I would like to thank the Saskatchewan Literacy Network for inviting me to do this. It's been a real pleasure. If you'd like to stick around, I'm prepared to answer any questions you might have. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us today for Family Literacy Day. Thanks to Saskatchewan Literacy Network for organizing this for us. I've got some questions here, and so I'll see if I can answer them. From the grade 2 class in Eston, hello everyone in Eston, thanks for joining me today. It says, have you ever lived in the Arctic? I never have lived in the Arctic. I've visited many times. I lived right on the Alberta territorial border when I first started teaching, and I spent time in Churchill, but that's not really considered the Arctic. So no, I've never lived there. I just love to go visit though. And it says, why did you choose to write the book? Well, I chose to write the book because my daughter lives in the north, and she was having trouble finding books about the North for little kids. So I used to be a teacher, and when I retired, she said, you should write a book. And my son is an artist, and we decided that he would do the illustrations. So that's how we came to write the book. And the next question says, how old are you? Well, I'm very, very old. I'm 68. And then it says, do narwhals live in any other oceans beside the Arctic Ocean? Well, there's an interesting story that you can check. One little narwhal got lost and ended up in the St. Lawrence River. And he has been adopted by a group of beluga whales. And you can check that out online, and you can see this little narwhal swimming with the belugas. It's really, really very nice. But they prefer salt water and cold water. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. What is my favorite food? I don't think there's a potato I've ever met that I didn't like. So any kinds of potatoes would be my favorite kind. Ooh, when did narwhals begin to exist? Well, I don't think we know for sure, but scientists have found relatives of the narwhal that they believe to be between 3 and 4 million years old. So I think the narwhals have been around for a very, very long time. Do I have children? Yes, I do. I have a daughter, Colleen, whose idea it was to write the book in the first place, and she and her family live in Yellowknife. And I have one son, Morgan, who lives in Toronto, and he's the one who did all the nice pictures in the book. What is my favorite color? I'd have to say green is definitely my favorite color. What do cloudberries taste like? Well, cloudberries are very much like a raspberry, but people talk about them as being more custardy and maybe a little tangier. If you live in Newfoundland and Labrador, they have them there, but they refer to them as bake apple, which is interesting. And I'd like to say hello to Miss Crawford and the grade 5-6 class at Wascana Plains School in Regina. I'm glad you were able to tune in and watch us today. I don't know if any of the questions have come from you, but thanks for watching. And to Miss Legg and the kindergarten class at École Canot in Regina. Thank you for joining us. And Etta says, we like the walrus. How long did it take for you to write the book? Well, it doesn't seem like there's much writing in the book, but it took me quite a long time because I had to make sure that the information that I was giving you was true, and then it all had to make sense when I tried to do the alliteration. So I would say it probably took several years of thinking about it and then getting the pictures to match. I would think probably it was 3 years from the time we started until the time we actually had a book. And Jessie Siemens in the grade 5-6 class in Beachy. Hi to you too. Where are all the places you've taught? Well, I have taught in Driftpile, Alberta. I have taught in High Prairie, Alberta. I've taught in Manning, Alberta. I've taught in Chaplin, Saskatchewan, in Glentworth, Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon. I taught at Muskeg Lake First Nation, just outside of Saskatoon. I taught in McGregor, Manitoba. I taught in Leader, Saskatchewan, in Burstall, Saskatchewan, and Estuary Colony, one of the Hutterite colonies near Leader. And then when I retired, I was principal at the Spring Lake Colony, Hutterite colony in southwest Saskatchewan. So I've sort of been Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta is where I've done most of my teaching. From Hazlitt School, the grade 1 and 2s would like to know what inspired me to write the book. Because my daughter was looking for some more information that was about the North, I did that, and because I really, really have always been very interested in the people and places up north. Now here's another question. Did I always like writing and sharing stories? I think so. I do like to write. And for any of you who think you might like to write a book, it's really important to do lots of reading. The more you read, the more words you learn, and the more words you learn, more ideas you get. It makes writing much easier. And as far as sharing stories, I have people in my life who would say that sometimes I tell tall tales. So I like to share stories, and some of them are not quite as accurate as what's in the book. 3-4 class in Regina. Have you ever seen any northern animals in real life? Well, yes, I have. I've seen polar bears walking down the streets when I was working in Churchill. I swam in Hudson Bay with a whole bunch of belugas, which was kind of scary, except they're really nice. They wouldn't hurt anyone, but it's just kind of scary when all of a sudden you've got a bunch of whales coming at you. And I have seen walrus and certainly animals in zoos. I've seen an Arctic fox for real. I've seen caribou for real. Yeah, so I've seen some of the northern animals for sure in real life. How come you named the book Never Rub Noses with a Narwhal? Well, I'm just going to show you. This is Neville, the narwhal, and this is just a nice soft tusk, but the real ones are made out of hard bone, just like your bull's horns would be. So it wouldn't be very much fun to rub your noses on something that sharp and pointy. So that's why I called it that. I just thought it was kind of a fun name for it. Okay, there's lots of you who want to know how long it took me to write the book. And I won't tell any tales, but I think it would have gone faster had I not been waiting for my artist. My artist has a job and a life beyond doing pictures. So it took a little longer waiting for the pictures, and I really wanted the pictures to be done by my son. So I was prepared to wait. So it was a couple of years before we got it done. Let's see, I don't know if I've got everybody's questions here. Why did your daughter choose to live in Yellowknife? Well, I'm not just sure. I think she was attracted to the north as well, and got an opportunity to go north and took it. And she's very happy there, and we just have a new granddaughter who lives in Yellowknife as well, so that's quite exciting. And I live in Saskatoon now. I've lived in a lot of places in Saskatchewan because my father was a railroader. So when I see Eston and Hazlet and Beachy, I know where all those little places are because I lived in lots of them when I was your age.
Grade 4-5 class at Westcliff School asks, what's your favorite animal?
My favorite animal? Well, if we're talking about northern animals, I would have to say a walrus. I think they're very cool. But if it is just an animal in general, I'm a dog person. I have 2 dogs, and I really like dogs. I don't know if we've got any more questions. Someone did ask me what the narwhal uses his tusk for, and I think the scientists don't really know for sure, but they think maybe digging up the ocean bottom and stirring up shellfish and worms and eels and whatever's on the bottom. They kind of scoop them up shovel them up with their tusk, and then they swoop in and kind of vacuum them up. They also think that the males use it for communication. They've never seen narwhals be aggressive with their tusk, but they have seen 2 rubbing their tusks against each other, and they think it's a form of communication. But they're very difficult animals to study because they like to spend their life under the sea ice. And if you notice, they're one of the few animals that don't have a fin on their back. That's so because they're under the ice, and they would be scraping their fin on the ice if they had one on their back. And hello to the kindergarten class at Queen Mary School in Prince Albert. Hi, how are you all today? Oh, and thank you. They said they really liked the reading and are making a GAC right now. Well, I hope your GAC are more exciting than mine. They work really well. I'd like you to try them out outside, but I'm sure yours will be pretty with colors and polka dots and stripes and jewels even. But thank you for making those. And for anyone else who's interested, the pattern for the agak and for the ootpik and some information about maybe writing your own alliterative book. You could write one about your family or your classmates. There's some information about that and a few more ideas of things that you might want to do with the book depending on your age. There's some activities for maybe older kids and some that are more appropriate for little people. So you can download those activities on the Saskatchewan Literacy Network website, and that's just saskliteracy.ca/narwhal, and that's all lowercase. So you'll find there a pattern to make your ootpik, and the ootpik can be made. I made some of them using sewing machine, but they also can be done by hand very easily. So your mom and dad or your teacher maybe can help some of those who are too small to use a needle on their own. Oh, and the grade 3 class in Eston. Oh, we have another class in Eston. What's the favorite part of your book? The favorite part of the book? I kind of like the ravens, you know. It's a funny colored page, but that looks like some of the dumpsters in Yellowknife, the dumpster outside a very colorful apartment building where I watched the ravens tear lots of garbage and spread it all around. And then when I started learning more about ravens, it turns out they are really, really clever birds. So yeah, I like the raven page. I don't think they're everybody's favorites, but I like them. And my favorite place to visit. Well, if I'm not visiting people up north, I like to go where it's nice and warm in the winter. And so usually, before COVID times, we go to Jamaica for our winters. But this year I'm enjoying having winter in Saskatoon. And my favorite grade to teach. Wow, that's tough, you know, because I taught everything from kindergarten to grade 12. And I enjoyed teaching high school English because we could talk about all sorts of things and share ideas. But I really enjoyed the enthusiasm and all the wonderful questions from little people. So I don't know that I had a favorite. Depending on the year and where I was, pretty much everybody I taught were my favorites. Oh, École Wilfrid Laurier, grade 3. Does the tooth hurt the narwhal when it grows out of its lip? Well, you know, that's a good question. I don't know if it would or if it happens so slowly that it just, I don't know. That's a very good question. I'm going to have to look that up. So the next time somebody asks me, I'll know the answer. But I somehow don't think it would hurt them very much. And from that same school, at École Wilfrid Laurier, our female Arctic fox is orange. In the spring, like other animals, like rabbits here, you know, they're white all winter, and then as spring comes, they start getting changing colors, so they blend in with the color around them. So yes, Arctic foxes are the only ones in that family that change color. No other member of the dog family, which are dogs and coyotes and None of them change colors, only the Arctic fox. It's for his protection. Oh, are there any narwhals who grow two tusks? I believe that there are. They wouldn't both be as long. It's rare, but there have been narwhals with two tusks, and one of them will be quite a bit smaller. The one that comes out the right side, the right top tooth, is generally smaller than the left. It's the left-sided one that turns into the great long tusk. Traditions Elementary School in Mormon. Hi. And then another one from the grade 3 in Eston. What's my dream job? My dream job, I'm kind of living it right now, is that I get to talk to people about this book, which I really like. So my dream job, before we couldn't do it anymore, was going around visiting libraries and school classes and bringing all my my stuffed animals and my map and such, and sharing it with you live and in person. But we can't do that anymore, so I guess this is my dream job right now. And, oh, what are my dogs' names? Well, my dogs' names are Dexter, and Dexter is a black dog. He's kind of a Beagle Cocker Spaniel cross. And Seamus is my other dog, and he's black, brown, and white Cocker Spaniel. And yeah, they're quite a big part of our family. I hope I'm not missing any of these. How long do narwhals live? And that's from the grade 5 and 6 class in Beachy. I am not sure. I would have to check that, but I think probably left alone in the wild 20 to 25 years, I think. 50 years, pardon me. I've got my fact checker is here, and they can live to be 50 years. So you can get a very old narwhal. When did I first see a narwhal, and how did you choose the name for the book? Well, I first saw a narwhal many, many years ago. The first time I went far up north, probably in the late 70s, and how did I choose the name for the book? Just because I thought it was funny that if a little kid rubbed their nose, and they used to say that the Inuit people rubbed noses to say hello, or it was sort of their way of greeting each other or giving someone a kiss would be to rub noses. So it would be fine to rub noses with an Inuit person, but I don't think you'd want to rub noses with a narwhal. I've never seen narwhals swimming in the Arctic. I've never seen them. I've seen them in captivity, but I've never seen a real narwhal. I haven't been up to the Arctic coast. That's my next trip. I would love very much to drive up to Tuktoyaktuk and be right on the Arctic Circle. I think that would be a very cool thing. Mrs. Buchan, Miss Kemp, and the grade 1-2 class at Coronation Park Community School in Regina loved the story and thanking me for sharing it with you. Well, thank you very much for listening. It was lovely to share with you. I'd like to meet you all sometime, maybe in your own classroom. And it says, what is the flower on your sweater? The flower on, oops, where is it? Over here. That is from the north, and it's made out of moose hair. And it's called moose hair tufting. And they take the moose hair and dye it, and then they make flowers, and you can buy pictures that have them encased in glass. So yeah, that's from the north. And actually, these earrings are little ulu, the woman's knife that is in the book. These are just little silver ulus. Hello from Angola. Have you ever thought of having the book translated into other languages? Well, I don't know many people from Angola, so I am thinking this might be from Nancy Ofiki. Hello, if that's you. I have thought of having it translated into other languages, specifically French and some of the indigenous languages, but it wouldn't be an alliterative book anymore. So I have to come to terms with that. If we were to translate it, it would just be a book about the North, which is fine, and I am giving serious consideration to that. I would very much like to have it in some of the northern languages, and certainly into French, but it would have to change the format quite a bit if I translated it. It wouldn't be alliterative anymore. What do girl narwhals look like? Well, girl narwhals look very much like boy narwhals, except they don't have the tusk, and they are a little bit smaller. Some girls do, but it's very, very few. Only about 2% of girls have a tusk. But other than that, they look. If you get a copy of the book, you'll see that there are narwhals, and there are some girl narwhals and some boy narwhals. The girls don't have a tusk, and the boys do. How many books have I written? Well, I've written 1.5. So I've written this book, and now I am looking at writing another book. And some of the characters in this book are writing poems. So it's going to be a rhyming book. And I think it'll be some of the people that you've met and animals that you've met in this book. Hopefully they'll make an appearance in the next one. Do I have any other animals? No, just 2 dogs. And my favorite number, that's an interesting, I think my favorite number would be number 8. I don't know why. I think I like the 2 circles. Kind of looks like a snowman. And I think maybe we have come to the end of our questions. So it was lovely to spend some time with you. I hope you learned something new. And again, if you want to find any of the activities I mentioned, you can go to saskliteracy.ca/narwhal, and you'll find all the information there. So thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of Family Literacy Week. I hope you find lots of cool activities to do. Bye-bye.